I say this because nobody says it. You see what I'm saying?
Welcome everyone to this edition of Real Talk series in conjunction with Tri-City Collective and the Woody Guthrie Center. My name is Crystal Patrick, and today our topic is what to do about money when you ain't got none, or what to do about money when you don't have any. Today, our panel consists of three powerhouses in the community. We have Sidney Andrews from Oklahoma City, whose company, The Black Umbrella, helps Black entrepreneurs find their way. We also have Cindy McGhee with NextGen Tax Services, and also Pastor Tim Newman, or Newton, I'm sorry. You know what, I have you as Newman in my phone. I'm so sorry. So basically, let me just say this right now. This is very informal. So we're gonna have fun, we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna be serious, but we're also gonna have while we figure out how to solve all the world's problems when it comes to money. So, Sidney, tell us about your business, The Black Umbrella.
Sure. We started The Black Umbrella, I guess about a year ago, based on me and a friend of mine, my co-partner, Richard AJ, just having a conversation on things that we'd like to see in our community. From there, it turned into us creating our own business. So we figured with that, we'd help people with similar ideas of creation, any positive culture idea that they have, try to help bring that to light. So we do a full consultation analysis and, like I said, try to get them across the finish line with their idea.
Okay. All right, Miss Cindy, what do you do with your business?
So NextGen is a full-service accounting firm. We are a team of 12 unapologetically dope women.
Hello.
And we get the privilege to work with small business owners who have big ideas. We exist to help create and educate the next generation of ultra-successful business owners. So we are helping folks that are wanting to get their financial house in order to prepare themselves to be the next great.
Awesome. So you do more than taxes.
We do a lot more than taxes.
Yes,
yeah,
ma'am.
Taxes is a big part of it, but we do
Right.
a lot more than that.
All right. And on to Pastor Tim Newman. Yes, sir. Huh? Newton. I did it again. Oh my God.
Yes, you did. It's okay. Good
I
thing
just
I'm
know
not
you
going to
by
ever
Pastor
run off.
Tim. I just know you by Pastor Tim. For first, I was calling him Tim Norman for a long time before people were like, that is not his last name. Okay, you're just Pastor Tim to me. So Pastor Tim.
It's okay.
Thank you for the grace. So we all know you affiliated with the Dream Center and Drexel Academy, but what many may not know is that you're also an entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about your endeavors.
On the entrepreneurship tip, I have a real estate company. We do property management for multiple different clients as well as our own properties, buy and flip, some multifamily, a little bit from between Birmingham as well as Birmingham, Atlanta, and Tulsa. But then also I own a media production company my wife, she runs, called 112 Media Group. And so we do that as well as closed captioning for the hearing impaired. So a captioning company called Caption Hero. And so those are the three companies that currently have and try to make some investments here and there on different endeavors, you know, whether it's short term or long term. If I can make a little extra money, I'm all about it.
What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite, or what do you most enjoy doing out of everything that you have your hands in? You don't have to put the kids in that. We know the kids are your favorite, but.
Yes, yeah. I mean, honestly, it is like Drexel and the Dream Center. That's like, you know, a lot of people say, you know, I want to make a bunch of money and live on the beach. And for me, like Drexel, that's my beach. And so that's me sitting on the beach, sipping lemonade. You know, I have my school, but I would say, you know, from a entrepreneurship standpoint, I love just people and just creating something and seeing like where can we take it and solving problems. And so a lot of times when you have different individuals that have companies. And if I can invest in, you know, you may need $20,000, but you think you need this, but let's really look at why your company is hitting that glass ceiling, and how can we make it go forward with a $20,000 investment that I'm going to make into your company. You know, how does that really like help move it forward? Because now if I put 20,000 into your company, I have an invested interest to see you be successful. And so I like being able to do that, and just seeing that process, is just taking it from that emphasis stage to where they're making money.
So I kind of want to go from like go down this little journey with y'all for the next hour about starting from the position of, I don't have any money in the bank, or I have very little savings. I have my jobs coming in, right? You know, I work, I have a little bit of income coming in. What is the first thing I should do when I'm sitting down looking at my finances? We talk about budgeting. How important is a budget, a household budget, as well as a business budget, but how important is a household budget, especially when you don't even have any money to budget? Cindy, can you talk a little bit about the importance of having a budget?
Well, I think even before you create a budget, I think you have to kind of have some honesty and be honest with yourself, because oftentimes we say we don't have any money, or feel as though we don't have any money, because we're not being a good steward over the resources that we have. Because regardless how much money we have, or even how little money we have, if we're not a good steward over it, it's still not going to be enough. More money is not going to necessarily solve the problem. So you have to, really be honest and say, kind of, where is my money going? And then create a budget to redefine where that money needs to go. I find so many people, when they're in a state of feeling as though they have no money, once they do, have that honest look at their finances and start to put together a budget, realize they actually waste a lot of money on simple things that don't seem like much individually, but they sum up to a bigger number. So if it's, stopping at Quick Trip for gas station coffee, or Sonic for happy hour for a cherry limeade, those don't seem like significant purchases, because they're not. But when you sum them over the course of a month, they very well may be. And so I think it's important, to be honest, to take an honest look at where your money is spent, and then redefine where it actually needs to be spent by creating a budget.
Did you all grow up in a household where your parents, did you have that model to you? Like, if whoever you grew up with, did your family operate within a budget? Sidney, did you grow up in a household where that was modeled to you?
Yes, it was. I grew up in a household where all my needs were met and most of my wants were as well. But my parents, they established a foundation to where me and my brother understood that, every purchase isn't good. You have to earn it and really understand the impact that it's going to have long term. And if you have it necessarily, every new Jordan, you don't have to have. So we were able to understand, that concept at an early age, unlike many others. So we were fortunate. I was fortunate for that.
Sidney, do you think that it's difficult, and anybody can answer this question, but do you think it's difficult for people to sacrifice the now for the long-term goal? Like when Cindy was talking about stopping at Quick Trip and getting the coffee and the cherry limeade, when you have people coming in you are helping to build their businesses, or they want to start a business, what is one of the main roadblocks that you see when it comes to sacrificing?
The first thing that we see is the immediate results. So we see that success that people envision themselves, which is important. You want to kind of speak it into fruition, but there's a lot of work and other things that have to go into place with that. I would say that slowing down and taking the process, is a big important factor for that.
And you know what? It's so true what Cindy just said about basically being disciplined, because I'm just full disclosure, I ate sweet Lisa's when I could have cooked. You know what I mean? Like, those things do add up over time. Planning, right? How important is planning, like planning your meals and, planning, I guess that's what that budget is for, able to help you plan your meals, and that you have food in the refrigerator, and yes, I want that pork chop, but I can make my own. Because you're right, it does add up over time. And if you're stopping at Sweet Lisa's or Wanda J's or wherever else you want to go 2-3 times a week, then you probably spend about $150-$200 a month before you know it. So we talked about being honest about where you are with your money before you can even create a budget, right? And looking at your finances and then understanding, okay, this is how much I have coming in and this is how much I have going out. What do you do when there's a huge deficit? Well, you don't even have enough, even if you suspend all your spending, right? You say, I'm not eating out, I'm not getting that coffee. What's the next step? Because this is where a lot of people are. Like, I've done all the things, but now I still have this huge deficit.
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's necessarily the right answer, but I think part of it is looking at kind of the buckets or the categories of where you're spending your money. So oftentimes when I'm working with people from a business perspective and we're looking at what their budget needs to be, we look at what is the percentage of your income that should be allocable to your rent. What percentage should be allocable to your advertising if it's a business. So if it was personal, it would be what should be allocated to your rent or your living situation, to your groceries, to the different categories of personal expenses. And what we commonly find is those percentages are out of whack. And so the reason a deficit exists is because you're actually spending more on, let's say, rent or more on one of your categories than is average or typical. And so you have to redefine kind of where that money needs to be spent to close that gap. And so many people think, well, I just need to make more money, and that's the answer, I need to make more money. Actually, you need to reallocate the money you have to the right categories. And that's sometimes, a hard truth to accept, because I'll speak from my own experience. I have champagne taste on a beer budget. And so where I may choose to live, what I may choose to drive, it may not be aligned with how much money that I have. And so I have to get those two in sync. And I have to take what I make today and sync that up with what percentage should be allocable to each of my primary categories and make sure. And that may not mean that you live in the place you desire to live, and it may be a short-term thing, but we have to make those tough decisions to make sure we are allocating whatever resources we have in the right pie shape, I guess I'll say, if you look at a pie chart, so that you're not spending more in one category than you should, and that's creating your deficit.
Sidney, when you sit down with budding entrepreneurs, when do you bump up against, do you find them bumping up against that when it comes to creating a business budget? Kind of like the same mentality of like, showing discipline and restraint. And can you speak to that a little bit?
The discipline part is probably, like you said, is the hardest part. Just being honest with yourself, both personal and business wise. We see a lot of people that they may have a why or the passion for what they want to do, but it doesn't add up to what they have immediately accessible. So what we try to do is direct them into ways that they can obtain funds that fits within their budget, but also something that doesn't put a strain on them. We don't want their business to fail before it starts. So
right.
We try to get that in order with them, give them all the options possible, but it is something that's common that we do see.
Well, what do you guys say to when you said obtain funds? If I can't go into the bank and get a traditional bank loan, or if I don't qualify for certain grants because I have a felony on my record, what are some of the options for people who are in those situations?
Sure. So we try to align that with what their business goals are, but we try to focus on what their skill set, what they have now. So if they for instance, say work in banking or in taxes or something to that nature financially, then they can do that as a side job. Everyone doesn't have to quit their 9-to-5 to be an entrepreneur. So what we try to get them to focus on is, like I said, utilizing their skill set and fundraising, donations, anything like that. People of color, we don't always have access like some other people to a huge trust or inheritance and things like that. But there are ways that you can fundraise. So we try to help direct them in that manner.
When you said that we may not have direct access to traditional pathways to funding, Pastor Tim, do you know of any alternative ways, or what do you think is an alternative way to create that capital, to create that fund if you don't have those traditional pathways? Like, is there any type of community situation, community building, what do you say to that?
There's multiple ways that we can try to like raise funds when you're trying to, whether it's a real estate or entrepreneur venture. You know, there are, like, even locally here in Tulsa, you have TEDC, that Tulsa Economic Development Corp. They give out very, very low interest loans, regardless of your credit, to budding entrepreneurs within that's targeting certain geographic areas. But then you also have like private lenders, private individuals, like even with real estate, you have what you call hard money lenders, or just individuals say, you know what, I believe in what you're doing. I see what you're trying to do. The numbers work out, and I have this money that I want to invest in. I can make more money by giving it to you than by putting it aside the stock market. And you'll honestly be surprised like how many people out there are willing to do that. That's honestly how I got started, utilizing like private capital from individuals. They'll say, you know what, like the numbers make sense. And from a business standpoint, like that's what they're looking for. Does the numbers make sense? And honestly, like, I think that's the biggest thing, especially when it comes to a business standpoint. Like, you have to know your numbers. Now, whether it's real estate or it's, you know, you want to start, you know, a chicken shack, like that, like, your numbers have to be tight, and what you're like, and it has to be realistic. And if you're able to do that, where to an investor, to a business person, they can take those numbers and say, you know what, like I can see that if I give you this money, I'm going to make a return on it. And if you're able to do that, your credit doesn't matter. Like I've used this example before. Most of the time, like a credit score is pretty much just, you could think of it like a trust score. I don't know you, so the world or the US have created this system to say, okay, like how much can someone trust you? And this is the number this evaluation I'm gonna put on it. But once we know you, it doesn't really matter. Like the banks that I deal with, like the actual institutional banks I deal with, they haven't ran my credit in years now, but I've done deals with them multiple times now. Right. And so they don't care. Like that number's out the window, because now they have a relationship with me and that trust is there. But right. once you build that trust, your credit score doesn't really matter anymore.
Well, when you're talking about building trust and the numbers, and I hear data. So Cindy, when COVID hit and all this federal money started becoming available, but a lot of people like just really wrote themselves even out of the picture because they hadn't filed taxes on their business. You know, can you speak a little bit? I mean, it's not funny because it's sad, because, you know, can you speak a little bit to why we need to have our business lives in order, to go along with what Pastor Tim just said?
Yeah, I think COVID was obviously a tragic situation, but a very illuminating situation that we can grow and learn from, because it's exactly like you said, so many, particularly business owners of color, were not in a position to be eligible or receive any of the grant money that was available because they didn't have the financial house in order. And that was not one that you could, you know, remedy in a short course of time. So you had to go back and spend, in many cases, weeks compiling data, trying to put financials in order that really should have been in order to begin with. And I find, unfortunately, even outside of a pandemic situation, business owners and new entrepreneurs don't understand the importance of having good financial accounting records. And it's no different than if, I use this analogy all the time, because sports are my thing. If you're playing in the basketball game and you have no scoreboard, you don't know how many fouls you have, you can't communicate with your coach. Wow. I mean, it's really hard to win that game without knowing what's the score. And the same is true in business. If you don't really know the score, meaning you don't know how much money you're making, how much money is going out, therefore what your profit is, it's really hard for you to manage your business to win. And in the situation where we just faced with the pandemic, and there being a lot of free capital out there, I mean, they're loans that are forgivable. It is essentially free capital as long as you follow the rules, and the rules are not that hard to follow. To miss out on that is how we get the big wealth gap. It unfortunately made the wealth gap even wider, because the people that, you know, got access to that capital were the ones who were, you know, keeping their financial records in order, and the ones that were not, which unfortunately was mostly people in the Black community, they didn't get access to that capital. And so it is something that I think people hear about and they probably have the head knowledge in realizing, yeah, I probably need to do that, but they don't take that step. They don't have the discipline that we keep kind of coming back to do it. And then they find themselves in a situation where they can't get the capital that's needed to help their business survive and ultimately thrive.
Okay.
So even though we're coming out of the pandemic, praise God, we are in faith, it doesn't change the fact that you need sound financial accounting records. And since we're talking about people that may not necessarily have the resources to employ a CPA to do it, there's plenty of free software that does it. There's a software called Wave that's web-based and online, and it's free. And you can connect your bank account to it. It'll sync in transactions. There's tutorials on YouTube that teach you how to use even the software that has a small price. I mean, QuickBooks starts at $10 a month. And so it's not something that requires a huge investment. It really just requires discipline to do the work. And I'll say one other thing. I'm wordy, so bear with me. But I'll say one other thing.
You're saying a lot of good things. Keep talking.
So when it comes to thinking about investors, like you need your financial records in order, obviously, and then now you're wanting to attract an investor or a lender to help support your business. When an investor is looking at your financial accounting records, that's going to give them a part of the picture. The other part that people don't always think about is they want to see if you've invested in your company. And if you don't have financial capital to invest in your company, no harm, no foul. But have you invested the biggest resource you have, your time? Are you spending time in your business? If it's a side hustle and you work 40 hours a week and you may have to work a weekend or something just to like get what needs to be done in your regular job, if you're not willing to put forth that much effort in this business that you want an investor to put their hard-earned capital into, it's a no. They're not going to do it. So don't just look at it from what's facts on paper, but what sweat equity are you investing into your business? Because if you're not investing your time, your most valuable resource, your time, you're gonna be hard pressed to find someone who's want to invest their money in your business,
regardless of how good the numbers are.
Sure.
That was like that I had Holy Ghost bumps from that when you said that your most valuable resource is your time. And that's what we do when we go work for other people. We're trading our time for whatever value they place on our time. And I want to ask Sidney that, or go into what Miss McGhee just said about the sweat equity part. When you're dealing with entrepreneurs and people who are wanting to start businesses, is that something that you immediately kind of go to? How much are you putting into your business? Can you talk about that?
Right. So yeah, our initial conversation that I had with several people is just, almost sell me in a sense, tell me how you feel about it. How do you see this going? Why you want to do this and where that comes from. And from there, that inspires me to, do a lot of the leg work for you to find out everything that you're going to need to go, every license verification that you're going to need. So that's a huge part of it, because like you both touched on, that time factor is something that our experience, which I'll speak from myself with starting the Black Umbrella with my co-partners, that we work 40 hours a week and have to set aside certain amount from each paycheck, but also every weekend or late nights, just to see this grow. So we try to tell people, that's what it takes. It's more than just, like you mentioned, on paper, but your blood, sweat, and tears. Getting over those hurdles is a huge part of it.
So we spent the first half, and everything that you all have said has just been like golden little nuggets of truth. But what I keep coming back to in my mind is like the mental roadblocks, the mindset. Like, can we talk a little bit about the roadblocks in our mindset that really present the main challenges when it comes to getting our finances in order, our financial house in order, as Cindy said, and like coming out of poverty and lack and that mindset, and even like being socialized in this country where there's just so many dynamics at work when it comes to I don't necessarily want to say the spiritual aspect, but yes, really the spiritual and the internal aspect of finances and money and prosperity. And a lot of that is external, but really it's internal too. But a lot of it starts externally when we are socialized into thinking, even just me, when my kids go to I don't know if you've heard of, my kids go to Jinx, which is a wealthier school district, and they've been there since, it's a public school district, since they were pre-K. But the battle that I've had to go through to let my kids, to instill in them that you're not poor, and not all white people are rich, and not all black people are poor. You know what I mean? Like, this was a continue, because this is what this is what they started to see. Like, when they see people with big houses, and I'm like, you are not poor. I promise you. We can go to a place where you have infinitely more than other people, but it's just the external that, you know, that the messaging that she was getting without even trying. So can you all just kind of talk about those mindsets, about, you know, how do we break those chains, those mental chains? Because even if you do all the things that you all said, you know, if we don't have that inside right, you know what I mean? Like, then it's really all for naught. So to me, that's the most important foundation, is changing your mind about your situation, first of all. So can you all take some time and speak on that?
I personally, I grew up in poverty. So I didn't grow up with parents that was doing well, wasn't in position to talk to me about money. Like, my grandparents, they took care of me. And so they were on fixed incomes, and they were retired. They were done working. They had did their time. And so there wasn't a lot for us. And you're right. Like, there's this mindset you can get where you don't deserve, or you shouldn't be able to make this type of money. You know, so often I dealt with it, you know, and even now, the bigger the deal is, like, when I break that, I would say, I guess, like the glass ceiling of deals. You know, I went from doing, you know, a $20,000 deal or $50,000 deal to doing a $100,000 deal, then going from $100,000 deals to $1 million deal. And I remember when I was first approved for an $8 million deal, I didn't even think that it was even possible for me to even go into that, because of, I don't know if it was more of like I didn't think I was qualified or what. But
did you kept thinking somebody's gonna be like, okay, we just kidding, or we're sorry?
Yeah. I mean, I would just think like it's not even like possible. Like, can I even really do this? I mean, even when my wife and I bought our first house, you know, when we bought our first house, we were like, you know, we were staying in an apartment, and both of us she had just graduated from college. I had been away from my engineering job for some years, and I literally just kind of volunteered here within the community for like 3 or 4 years. And I had some money in savings, but I was down to the last little bit, you know, and start working a job. But it wasn't like I was working an engineering job, so I wasn't making 6 figures. So I'm thinking, like, surely we can't buy a house. I didn't even know what my credit score looked like. I was too afraid to check my credit. I just assumed that my credit was bad, because, I mean, honestly, I bought into the lie or the stereotype that Black people credit is bad. You know what I mean? And you just live that out. And so because of that, like those, and that's what I think that's something we have to be careful about, like, not to like believe the stereotypes against ourselves, like the positive and the negative ones. You know, we need to make sure that we live those things out ourselves, and we know, like, okay, this is what really happens with me. And so, like, my wife and I, we sat down, and I was like, one day I just said to myself, like, let's just go talk to someone and just see what can we get qualified for.
Right.
And so we went, and it was the first time me seeing my credit score in probably 5 years. And I was like, oh wow, like, we can qualify for that? We can actually buy a house for that much? And I was like, oh, like, well, if that's the case, let's go buy a house. You know, and it was just one of those things, it was a mental block that we had to get by. And I think, you know, often I have to chase it, even with like you're saying with your kids. You know, that was my biggest concern with moving to Tulsa and staying here. Like, when I moved here, I was supposed to just be here temporarily. And when I made a decision to stay here, I said to myself, I don't know if I want to raise kids here, because the unfortunate fact of the matter is most African Americans that live within Tulsa are not financially stable. They're more lower income. You know, you find it very hard pressed to find a lot of well-to-do African Americans. There's not there's not a substantial, well-to-do Black neighborhood. And mind you, for those that are watching, you know, I'm coming from the perspective of Los Angeles, California, from Atlanta, Georgia, from Birmingham, Alabama. Like, these cities have very major Black communities that are very, very, very wealthy. Not rich, they're wealthy. You know, like, they have foundations in their names, you know, like family foundations, you know what I mean? Like, it's so my perspective is different than someone that that grew up here, you know. And so so I say that, so I preface that statement because before y'all start beating me up. But so, like, there is a and so I was concerned about that with my own kids, because I was like, man, like, I don't want them to think that they're the exception to the rule. You know, like, it's like, no, like, this is the norm. And the truth of the matter is, like, I could just take you, you know, just a few major cities over, and you'll see a bunch of other Black people that live just like you, or better than you do.
Right.
You know, and so because I didn't want them to get caught up in that poverty mentality. And I think that's something that, as a people, especially when you grow up in poverty, you have to really shape and not allow that to deter and stifle your dreams on what you are and are not able to do.
When I grew up, basically my parents worked really hard all of their lives. You know, I remember my dad having like 3 jobs, and, you know, he took care of his family. We never were on government assistance until my parents got divorced. And then, you know, my mom, you know, you start having the struggles as a single parent, even with child support. You know, it's just a lot. So we grew up with lack being the norm. And I found myself starting repeating those same patterns with my kids. And I realized, like, hey, this is how you grew up, right? So you are going to have to be intentional about breaking some of those things, because you do not want to pass this on to your kids. So when, like, my electricity would be cut off when they were little and stuff, I would say, this is not normal. You know, I would be honest with them, like, she didn't do what was right with her finances. We're in this situation because I didn't make the right decisions. And I want you to use this as a cautionary tale, that when you are at the point where you have a beautiful, clean slate, and we talk about it, and it's not a shameful. I mean, I never felt good about it, but one thing that I've also noticed within our community, and within my family too, is that shame and embarrassment will just perpetuate the generational, you know, curse and pattern of poverty and lack. You know what I mean? And so that's how I grew up. And so I had to be intentional about, while I'm changing the trajectory, I want one of my kids to come along and see and watch, you know, and watch me try to rectify some of the mistakes I made in the past, like with irresponsible spending and impulsive spending. I see a lot of my bad habits have filtered down to them, to where they're door dashing food after I've cooked. You know what I mean? And there's a doorbell, and I'm like, what? You didn't, because you didn't want that's crazy to me, right? But this is how it might be this generation too. I talked to my friends and they were like, yeah, my kids do it too. But I'm just like, okay, well, you're eating like your overflow. I thought, you know, Jaden, you're going to be going to college. You're going to want money at school. You know, like, I want to put myself in a position where you don't have to be like a student athlete. When I went to OU, they played for the school full scholarship, but then they had to rely on dating a bunch of girls to eat, you know, on the weekends and stuff. I'm like, I don't want you to so let's just start thinking about, you know, changing, you know, what has been traditionally on our family line. Can you relate to that, Cindy, at all?
I can. And what I think y'all's story illuminates is that so oftentimes we judge ourselves before we even are in a position for someone else to judge us. I know I started my career fresh out of grad school, like brand new CPA, and I was working for some like the richest people in the world. I worked for one of the largest CPA firms in the world. And one of the things that struck me in that experience was that they paid less in taxes than I did as a brand new college grad. And I'm like, oh, I got to learn how they did that. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing I noticed is that they had kids who were my age that had a worse credit score than me, that had a lesser paying job than I did, but were making moves, were buying houses. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily the money that the parents were giving them, it was the opportunity that the parents were giving them. And they weren't saying, hey, you only make X amount of dollars a year, don't even try it. they gave them enough confidence to say, hey, go talk to the banker, go see what your options are. And so many times and I work with clients in the same space, we are too embarrassed to even attempt to see what we could do at that point, and then see what the path may be to get us to the place that we want to be. And so many times, if we ask the questions, if we, just shrugged off the embarrassment and the shame and just ask the questions, we may only be 3 to 6 months from the dream that we want to fulfill.
Right.
But we're too ashamed, or too, I guess, embarrassed to even pursue knowledge. We just sit back with what we have, and in many cases what we don't have, without taking at least the steps to try. And I think that's one of the things that we miss in passing down from generations in our community. It's not always just the money. It's the mindset. It's the holy gumption to be like, I'm gonna try this and see what happens. And if we would even do that, it may not work out exactly like we want, but we'll at least get enough knowledge to figure out how to get exactly what we want. That will help us progress even more than just, the investment, like the capital that may, quote unquote, solve our problems. We need the knowledge to learn how we don't even need to rely on others in many cases, if we will do the things that we need to do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna start calling you Pastor Cindy. Okay.
on that same thing, quick story. In the same situation, I had there was a deal that honestly, I didn't think that I could financially do. And me, I know it, the Holy Spirit said, no, go ahead and try for that. And the truth of the matter is, I didn't get the deal, but the bank approved it. I didn't get the offer, but the bank approved it. And I was like, oh, I can get qualified for that much money? It blew my whole perspective away, because it was an $8 million deal, and the bank gave me a pre-approval letter for $8 million. So once they gave me a pre-approval $8 million, I've never done a deal greater than, at one setting, for like $250,000, $300,000. And then once they approved for $8 million, I was thinking, here, it blew it out of the water. But it was just that whole perspective. And then I was like, oh, it's like gangbusters. I'm buying everything that moves, because I know I can get it. You know what I mean? And it's like, and once that happened, it was a game changer. And it's just that mindset.
Sidney, I want to ask you to touch on something that Pastor Tim and Cindy just talked about basically, like, the whole shame part of it is huge, because if you're too embarrassed to even ask, or we shut ourselves out of situations before. Baxter always says, I'm not going to tell myself no, somebody else is going to have to tell me no. Like, that's the kind of audacity that we have to have, right? But when she talked about access, information, opportunity, like, how important is that to even have the knowledge that, these resources are there, or that you can talk about, what did you say, the hard money lenders, Pastor Tim, and the different available resources and stuff that are available. But if you're not even aware of the information, and then not only do you not know about these things, but then automatically then you don't have access, and then when opportunity comes, well, then you're not even prepared. So can you speak to how important information is, and access to having those opportunities and being able to jump on them as budding entrepreneurs?
Sure. And we talked about it a little bit earlier with the SBA and the EIDL loans that, came up during the pandemic. One of the first things I do once we get a LLC and the EIN number established is apply. We have about 3 or 4 pending right now, even though there aren't any funds available. But just having that experience going through our process, and being able to search for certain grants, or look at certain loans, or speak to certain other professionals, in these other fields, and network to see, what resources are available. Both of Tim and Cindy touched on just the mentality of pushing through, and you mentioned it earlier with it being kind of a spiritual or purposeful pull. Those things inspire you to look outside the norm of what do I need to get started. So taking those risks of speaking with bankers and lenders, and just finding out what you're available to receive, is something that we do see in our line. And we encourage people to talk and research as much as they can, ask questions as much as you can. Like I said, knowledge plus experience gives you the results that you want at the end of the day. But both have to, you have to understand both and work with them in a time.
Do you see that as with what Pastor Tim just said about when he got the $250,000, approval, that was cool. But then when he got that $8 million, he was like, wait, hold up. Like, the world is mine. Whenever you bring the information to the people that you're consulting with or assisting, do you see that same kind of reaction? Like, wow, I didn't even know.
I do. One of either the first or second meeting that I have with people, it usually ends like, Sidney, do you really think this can happen? And we set, benchmark dates or goal line dates in which, certain things need to be in order. But, overwhelmingly, it's always, yes, this can be done. It's true. Other parts have to fall in line with that. But we do see that quite often, that people are just, almost shocked or overwhelmed that they bring a dream or idea to us, and they need our confirmation or push or support to actually say that, yes, this can happen for you, and we believe in it. So it's this thing of restoring that in each other, whether it's pride or whatever it may be, to actually push them through.
Do you see and all of you all can speak to this, because I know it's like 2020 and just like the last 20, 30, 40 years with technology and how it's just spiraled and just blown our minds, right? And even like in the last few years, where you have so many people who've made millions of dollars, through technology, different platforms. Do you see like the younger generation, or I say younger generation, I'm 42, so I think like 20s and 30s, to me, that's the younger generation. Have people moved away from like traditional like businesses and are more like, hey, I want to get on TikTok, I'm trying to, I want to become a YouTuber, and like, what do you see happening with the up and coming entrepreneurs? Is it still a mixed bag, or do you see, how has technology impacted like the new entrepreneur? I said all that just asked that question. Okay.
I feel like it's a blend. So I can say, like, for my company, I'm a CPA, so I do tax and accounting work, and that is a traditional type service, right? So that's something that's been around obviously for decades, but the way we do it is influenced by technology. So for 2 years, my marketing was exclusively digital. We did not do any kind of print, any kind of radio, any of the more traditional advertising venues. We only were on social media platforms, and that grew to the place of us getting like a multimedia campaign from there. And even how we interact with our customers is influenced by technology, because we use a lot of a web-based portal, and particularly now in the pandemic, we do a lot of Zoom and Google Meet conferences. So I think you see a blend. What's interesting to me though about like the really young generation, I have a 13-year-old now, the really young generation, is that they are actually getting, I feel like, introduced to entrepreneurship earlier than ever before, and I love it, because they're realizing there's ways to monetize what they do organically. So posting funny clips and videos on TikTok or on social media, that is a venue to actually generate revenue that they didn't think about it that way before. And so I have more clients than I ever would have dreamed that are teenagers that need, sound tax and financial accounting advice, because they're using
awesome.
that.
I love that.
Amazing. Yeah.
Well, that brings me to the last kind of thing I really wanted to touch on, and that was a perfect segue, was about the children and entrepreneurship and how we can change the trajectory of the next generation, particularly our people, the Black and brown children. And I know that Pastor Tim has this wonderful program in partnership with North Tulsa Complex and Drexel Academy, Kidpreneur. And so they're going through this process of showing these young elementary kids what it's like to start a business. How do you come up with an idea? How do you, build upon that idea, and all the different components of starting a business. Pastor Tim, why is it important to train up the next generation to not just be worker bees? And if you're a worker bee, there's nothing wrong with if that's what you want to do, but that is not what you have to do, right? Why is it important to train up that next generation?
Yeah, man, it is so important. I always tell that we are raising hustlers at Drexel Academy. Like That's what I want. I want to be like many like myself. It's like serial entrepreneurs. But no, it's really important because I was reading this stat a couple of years ago, and at the time I was saying third graders at that time. So now fifth graders today, 80% of the jobs that exist right now won't even exist. And honestly, like when I heard that statement 2 years ago, I thought that was crazy. But then COVID hit, and I'm watching industries fall to their knees and not come back. And it's like, oh wow, this is happening. Like this is literally happening. I mean, like literally think like whole industries are totally, they either, if they're not adapting, they're just disappearing. You know, like even just church. You know, look at what see what churches are doing now. Like everyone is online. No one's meeting inside the building. You have churches for sale all over the place because there's not enough people. Everyone's downsizing. All those skyscrapers inside downtown Tulsa that they're empty because they're not needed anymore. People are shifting their models. And so like for us, like at Drexel, you know, we're partnership with No Tulsa Complex, teaching those boys and girls those entrepreneurial type traits. Like the truth of the matter is, it makes them great employees as well, because you want employees that's going to treat their job like it's theirs. And if you can teach them those same mentality, they become problem solvers, and they're really the supervisors. So let's say our boys and girls, most of them never will own their own business. They will be the boss within that business or that corporation they're working for, because the mentality that we're putting in them right now. And I think that's why I think it's really important to teach our boys and girls entrepreneurship. Not that we want them to necessarily have to own their own business one day, but we want them to treat the company that they work for like it's their own. And that helps them move up that ladder where they make all the money. You know, like they're thinking in ways of, how can I create something that I don't necessarily have to put all the time in to still make money? You know, how can I make money in my sleep? And so it's great, like just to see the boys and girls doing that. My daughter, she's all about, you know, entrepreneurship and trying to make money, and obviously, but just seeing her write out her business plan and put a logo together, and she did all that after the first day. And she's coming and telling me what her slogan is, and I'm like, man, I haven't had a chance to read this Kidpreneur book, but you're caught on, like you're already on fire. And so it's exciting to just see how that's taking place within our boys and girls. And I think it's important that all parents really take time to teach their boys and girls about entrepreneurship. Kidpreneur is a book that you can buy on Amazon, and just allow your boys and girls to read it and take them through that book. So I think that's just something important, just makes them just a better, well-rounded person, in general, adult.
I feel like so often in our community, we are at one of two extremes. Either we, you know, don't have means, and so we say to our kids, I had to struggle for everything that I got, so you're going to struggle for everything that you get. Or we're on the other end of the spectrum, and we are, you know, I didn't have much growing up, and now I do. And so I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to give you all of the things that I didn't have. And I think we've got to find the middle ground. We've got to get from the extremes and come to the middle, because if we, you know, force our kids to struggle, we're really not giving them the leg up. We want them to stand on our shoulders. We really want to help them as best we can. If we give them too much, though, that's just as bad, because then they don't learn how to work, and they don't learn the value of the dollar. So one of the things I really hope that parents will consider is being intentional in passing down maybe lessons learned from lack, but also setting boundaries out of abundance, so that we can teach kids to kind of live in the middle, so that they learn the value of a dollar, and they learn potentially from the mistakes that may have created lack. I can't tell you the number of people that I have that are second generation entrepreneurs, and they are working with us, and they are successful. And it's because we've seen their parents successfully navigate that path, not too far on either extreme. And they already have a good foundation to build from, because the parents just understood, I've got to set boundaries. I cannot give you everything, and I also can't withhold everything from you.
Sidney?
Yeah, so I think 2020, it was going to be weird year anyway, with everything going on from pandemic to protests, etc. It seems to be a great awakening, for people of color. So changing that narrative and taking more control of it, embracing the culture that we create is something that I think we're all taking a major part of. So like she mentioned, parents passing down knowledge to the youth, and the youth actually, implementing that today is something that we're starting to see. Something that we preach here and promote here at the Black Umbrella is that very thing. So I agree with both of those points.
Down to our last few minutes, I just kind of want to recap. We talked about it. I feel like I could be on here for another couple of hours with you guys and really delve into the mindset piece, because that is so important. But Cindy, I really love what you just said about culturally, we as people I had a struggle. Like, I want to toughen you up because this world is cold. You know what I mean? And I don't want to send you out in the world with this idea that it's going to be so, this anything but cruel to you. But I think that the balance is important, because that's exactly the mindset that you're going to send your child out with. Like when you say give a leg up, like, I felt like sometimes that culturally, I'm like, are we the only people that just, when our kids turn 18, kick them out the house and say good luck? You know what I mean? Like, we, like other cultures, that's what families do. Even if it's not a monetary inheritance, there's so many other things that you can give your kids that, to help them navigate their way through this world. Your children, I believe, Sidney, are teenagers. Mine are. Cindy, yours are budding teenagers. Tim's going to have teenagers really soon. That's such a short time to try to prepare them, right, for the world. So this idea that when you turn 18, that, the valve is shut off. No, you're going to need your mom. You're going to need your dad. You're going to need grandma, grandpa, any kind of wisdom around you, because that's not enough time. That is not enough time. But anyway,
yeah.
Kind of got off topic there. Go ahead, Tim.
But I was going to say, like, I think, this is really important just as parents, just to remember that our ceiling should be our kids' floor. And so like the highest place that I'm going to reach should be where my kids are working themselves up from.
That's right.
And when we're able to do that, it's not even about leaving finances behind. It's knowledge. And if I can impart the knowledge that I have learned, because I think about everything I've learned in every single deal that I've done. Every deal I've done gave me more knowledge. People ask me all the time, what's the best way to start entrepreneurship? What's the best way to start in real estate? I say, just do it. Just buy houses, do it. Just do it. Like, don't go, if you're going to spend $14,000, $20,000 or $10,000 to go to a seminar, some class, save your money, go buy a house and make as many mistakes you possibly can. And you're going to learn from every single one of those mistakes, because that knowledge is priceless. And when you're able to pass that information down to your kids, that's what is going to increase them and allow them to build from that. So your kids' your kids' floor is your ceiling, and allow them to build up from that. I think that's just very important. What do we do for someone from budgeting standpoint that they don't have a consistent job? It's not a salary job. So they're working, they have an hourly wage. And so, it's hard to tell somebody, oh, you need to set a budget when you don't know how many hours you're going to work from week to week. So how do you help them navigate, and how do they budget?
So we'd have to at least come up with some kind of average, right? Because it won't necessarily be the same every week or every month, but we can develop an average based on maybe what's happened over the past 6 to 8, 10, 12 weeks. So come up with an average. And I tell everyone, you really should live below your means. So if we have an average and we set your budget that still leaves a gap, like still leaves a surplus after everything's paid, even on those weeks when your income dips a little below what it is on average, you should still be in an okay place. And unfortunately, I feel like one of the hardest concepts for me to get people to buy into, because they really want that immediate gratification of reaping the rewards for whatever work that they do. But if they want to have sustained success, we have to set a budget that doesn't spend every dime you make. There should be a surplus, and it should be under even your average. So when there's variability, you still have a gap to fill from, because I feel like as a culture, have been taught to be flashy because that was the picture of success. But the picture of success is not based on what people see in your car or in, external factors. It's actually in your bank account that nobody sees.
Exactly.
So if we're spending all of our money to impress people that probably don't like us anyway, which is a whole nother topic, then we're really not successful. We're really just blowing money for no reason. And so what we need to do is be comfortable with living below our means and experiencing success that maybe doesn't look that way to the outside world, but that we know we've achieved success because our bank account, our numbers and our security that's created by having money in the bank evidence is success. And living below your means is the way to get there. And I have so many conversations about that very topic, and no one wants to hear me on it. Everybody's like, no, I got a ball like I'm supposed to. No, you need money in the bank. So live below your means. And that's
especially with, sorry, I don't know what, I got disconnected from you. I apologize for that, but thank you for keeping the conversation going. You all have been amazing. How do people get in contact with you, or they want to talk to you a little bit more about what you're doing or become a part or even hire you on for something? How do they reach you? Sydney, I'll start with you.
Sure. So we're on Instagram and Facebook at The Black Umbrella. And my email is salewis@theblackumbrella.com. Easy to find our website, reach out and connect with us. We'd love to direct you in any way we can as far as, launching your business, developing you, growing you, and supporting you ultimately. So that's how you can reach us.
You are in the Oklahoma City area for anyone. This will be on Tri-City's page, and we are, Oklahoma City is one of one of the tries of the city.
Right.
And so, okay, and it's THA, not THE, right?
Yeah, THA Black Umbrella. Like you said, we're based here in Oklahoma City, but I've lived for several years in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as well as McGhee. So we try to focus on.
Oh, it's all love. We don't do that East versus West anymore. We love Oklahoma City.
It's Oklahoma. We're Oklahoma based, so.
That's right. Okay, awesome. And so, Cindy, I don't know how you haven't been doing my taxes. I'm just really feeling disappointed. I need to come make an appointment and see you ASAP. So how do people reach you?
So you can find access to us on our website, which is nextgen.tax. NextGen is NEXTGEN. And you can access our website to get connected with us. We have a get started page that lets you just submit your information to us. We're also just a phone call away. You can find us on all the social media platforms at NextGen Tax. So we're really not that hard to find. And I will say too, if you, shameless plug, if you follow us on our social media platforms, we drop a lot of good knowledge for free. So not everyone at their initial phase necessarily needs to engage a CPA, but you do need some knowledge that a CPA provides. So check us out on Instagram, on LinkedIn, or on Facebook, and you'll see we drop a lot of videos and a lot of content for free that can help people get kind of started and on their way. And our website features a lot of blog articles that are authored by members of our team that give you free information.
By a team, and like I said do my taxes, but you are so much more than that. And that's why I feel like it would be beneficial for me to come see you, because you do like a full service. Let's talk about it. Let's get these finances in order. And it's a team of 12 unapologetically Black women. So that's also a great plus. All right. Pastor Tim, how do we get a hold of you and all your 20,000 different things you got going on?
Just at Facebook, I try to stay on Facebook. You can always message me on Facebook, Instagram, follow me on Instagram, Tim Success Newton. The Dream Center, you can always catch me there. If not Drexel, or I'm probably just driving around the community trying to find a house to buy. So if you have a house for sale, get at me.
And real quick, Pastor Tim, how many meals did the Dream Center serve people this past?
So we just crossed over 5.8 million meals.
5.8 million.
Yesterday.
That I had to, it's like, wait, that is amazing. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for serving our community. Thank you all so much. Y'all were amazing. And y'all just have a beautiful day. Thank you for being who you are, for what you're doing in the community and really changing the legacy, changing so many legacies and getting some solid foundations built. Just and all the people that you touch. Y'all have a great day. Thank you.